Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. It's a finals week 2 preview. Only 6 teams remain in the competition and only 4 in action this weekend. So it'll probably be a little bit of a shorter pod. And sorry for being slow off the mark. I'm in an away venue today and nothing was working right. In fact, I've only got one sharpshooter send me a clip through for the games today. So maybe a few things are happening to a few people out there. But I hope you're all well, and I always appreciate your company. A rough week for me with my 2 best bets. Right, I go unders in Bulldog Storm, and there's 38 points exactly. We're on 38 and a half, and we get a 90-minute intercept try, 90-meter intercept try, sort of against the run of play, because it was the Dogs attacking late, if anything. But Warbrick pinches it with the Dogs getting desperate. 3 minutes to go, and we lose unders. You know, those ones sting. I had Brisbane under 20 and a half, and I got Walshy, basically. I mean, Brisbane only had, 12 points with 15 to go, had 20 points with 5 minutes to go. We had under 21 and a half. But, yeah, Walshy orchestrating those final 17 points. Well, Hunt had the final one, but Walshy got Brisbane in that position to win. Look, the intercept hurts me more. I'll talk about all 4 games. The Canberra-Brisbane game, I'll cop a loss. I picked Canberra to win. The line was 2.5. We'll talk about that too. So, every best bet matters to me. Bloody annoying to, go 0-2, whether we deserve that or not. But I suppose in the scheme of things, the best bet result will be long forgotten. But that result of that finals game and the game itself is going to live on in a lot of memories for a very long time. That's one of the greatest finals games I've ever seen. In fact, it's got me thinking, what are the greatest NRL finals games that come to your memory? If I just say what are the greatest games you've ever seen? And I know grand finals always sort of come to front of mind, and they're always going to be epic because they decide the season. And so straight away you'd say 2023 grand final. But what if I said not including grand finals, just any other finals matches? I'll pose that question to you guys. I've got a few that come to mind for me, but I'm sure that I know there's been so many great ones over the years. But that was an instant classic that we're never going to forget. And Brisbane, rightfully so, are going to be absolutely buzzing. So we'll talk greatest ever finals matches, but we'll talk about all 4 games last week, of course, and then we'll break down the 2 this week. But before all that, let's do best bets. I've actually got 3 best bets this week, despite there only being 2 games. So let me share them with you now. So Raiders Sharks, I like either team 1 to 12. It's $1.85 on 365. I won't go into that in great detail. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I give the Sharks every chance. I think that line should probably even be shorter than the 4.5 that it is. I'll explain why I think the match is actually close to dead even because of the factors in opposite directions. And additionally, I like unders in that game. And I think it's about a 44.5, 45.5 Saturday night it is. But I'm going to play similar to a neither team to 30. So you can obviously bet neither team to 30, and they've both got to score 29 or less. I've come up with a same game multi that's even slightly better than that. So the same game multi, you play it on Sportsbet. You play Raiders team total under 31.5 and Sharks team total under 29.5, and you get $1.80. So it's like neither to 30, but in fact, Canberra can actually score as many as 31. So neither to, Canberra can't get to 32, Sharks can't get to 30. All right, that's my second best bet. My third best bet is an over, where I'm going to play the Bulldogs team total over 12.5, and that's $1.85 on 365. Sunday afternoon, the Dogs are not dead for mine. I think they're going to have to be able to take some chances to be in the game against Penrith, and I still think the Bulldogs, with their speed and with their depth, have enough to empty the clip. The Bulldogs are going to be hurting, and we know they're battered, and there are outside back injuries and a reshuffle again. And Penrith's obviously on a mission and is a really staunch defense. But I still think the Doggies are good for 3 tries here. And over 12.5, you may not need 3. I think the Dogs would take the 2 if offered as well. And I'm going to make the case for that being closer than people expect as well. I know some will probably think Bulldogs are out in straight sets and they're going to fold, and that may be the case, but I think it's going to be closer. I can't wait to speak about both these matches, but let's lead into that by talking about what did obviously occur over the weekend and greatest finals games. What have people got? Canberra Storm prelim 2020. I don't know if you've got the right one, but 2020, I thought the Storm won comfortably. Wasn't that at Suncorp? But I actually had Canberra Storm as one of my favorite ones in 2019 when Canberra won in Melbourne. Is that the one you're talking about, Skepdol? For me, that actually came to my mind as well. One of the greatest. Well, Skepdol says Storm had to hold on for dear life against a Canberra fight back 2020. Maybe that game wasn't as close as I recall. Was closer than I recall. Greatest finals games. Of course, Broncos Cowboys had the unforgettable 2015 grand final, but 2016, that game that went to extra time in Townsville, that was an elimination game. Broncos Cowboys, that was a cracker. Obviously, recency bias. One that comes to mind for me that was so much fun was actually Manly Bulldogs last year, week 1 of the finals. I thought that was outstanding. Manly scoring some spectacular tries, pinching that one. Massive crowd on a Sunday arvo, elimination game. That was a beauty. Then another one that I'll never forget, 2014, Roosters Cowboys. Do you guys remember when the Roosters were up 30-0 and Jonathan Thurston led Cowboys came all the way back to 30-all? I think Maloney kicked a field goal, 31-30. And then the Cowboys actually thought they'd won it and the try was disallowed. Like that. I mean, if the Cowboys had come back and won, it probably would have been the wildest of all time. But it was still unforgettable game. And then speaking of unforgettable, I can't remember the year, but in my mind, I feel like Warriors over Storm. Warriors upsetting the Storm. Was that an 8 versus 1? I feel like that would be a game I'd love to go back and revisit. In fact, Jeremy in the comments says Warriors Storm 16 or 17 years ago. Warriors won a last-minute try. I think it was 1v8. I think you're talking about the exact same game that comes to mind for me. Yeah, that was an all-timer. Okay, let's talk about the one 2 days ago in Canberra. Back and forth, first half, tries a little bit too plentiful for my liking. 16-12 it was to Canberra at the break, and I had Brisbane's team total under 21.5. I did regret a little bit, like looking at the beautiful sunshine conditions. I regret a little bit playing a team total under. But hey, if I hadn't played it that way, I would have gone like Canberra to win or -1.5 if I could have found that, and even leaned to Canberra -2.5 to be fair. But obviously the game sort of went to another level in a 51st minute when it was just a 4-point game. And Brisbane was on the attack and Brisbane dropped the ball and Huddy Young went and let Reece Walsh know about it. Now, Hudson Young does that 4 or 5 times every game. Okay, so he really did nothing wrong. Yes, he aggravated the opponent, but Huddy Young especially, everybody does it. Everyone gives it to the opponent when they drop it. And Reece Walsh is probably lucky that, he's a couple inches shorter than Huddy Young because he sort of tries to launch with a headbutt. And obviously people that don't like Brisbane or don't like Walshy are quite livid about that, and that only a fine has come out of it. So Walsh had to go to the bin. The thing is, it's a soft call by the ref to send a player from each side and it was Klein, and he's got a lot of criticism out of that game. And like I don't like the idea of, I'm the ref, I'm enforcing my authority and I'm putting people in the bin. If it's like what happened in the Dolphins Roosters game the other day where the ref put 4 of them in the bin. It's like if you put the same number from both sides, nobody really gets penalized. All right. So what's the point? Have some stones. And if one player clearly did something a bit worse than the other, then they're going to pay the price. In fact, it's a man in the bin for each side. And the penalty went to Brisbane. I couldn't figure that out, right? Then I thought, well, karma has prevailed here because Brisbane spills the ball and KO Weeks goes length of the field and scores. So now Canberra's suddenly up 10. A minute later, Carrigan's in the bin for a high shot, and now we know he's been given a 1-match suspension and accepted it. So Carrigan's out for the prelim and was instantly in the bin. So it was 12-11. And Canberra scored the next set through Strange. So suddenly it was a 16-point lead and 12 versus 11, 28-12. I mean, at that point, and that was with about 25 minutes to go, but that should have been game over. I mean, there was still a good 5 minutes left where Canberra had the man advantage, right? But Brisbane hung on for those 5. Walshy and Paddy got back out there And man, you just sometimes see it in sport where an athlete has the eye of the tiger. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's just like they just they have that look in their eye, like they're not going to be denied. And while she just came out, and it didn't mean that, oh, he's going to find a way to win this for Brisbane, but he was going to leave it all out there, right? And sure enough, I mean, Walsh took over the game, and was, Canberra can complain about this or that, or decisions, or obviously those tight calls by the bunker that denied Canberra a couple of times they thought they'd won the game. But Canberra, they have to look at themselves too. And that right edge defense was a big question mark. And while she breaks through and scores a try and cuts it to, so it was a 16-point game, cut it to 12, then sets up the Karapani try, sets up the Shibasaki try as well, hits a sideline conversion. Another sideline conversion hits the post, and Brisbane's down 2 because one of his conversions hit the post. But then Walshy nearly levels it up with a 45-meter field goal that hits the bar. So now I'm like, the only thing that separates these sides is at the post and the bar. And I thought Brisbane's going to lose by 2 and like get the cover, but lose the game. Final play of the game, another 45-meter field goal attempt by Walsh, and it's blocked. And you think that's game over because the full-time whistle goes, although the NRL will lead you to believe that's a soft full-time whistle. And look, we can't act like we're shocked because that is the standard when it comes to contesting, challenging, trying to block a field goal, that you just can't make contact with a kicker, be it the plant leg or the kicking leg. And who was it? Hosking. He's just trying to make a play, but he runs right across the path of Walsh and makes solid contact. And then you get the ball from, I think, where it lands, but with a blocked kick. I'm not sure what the rule is. Do they have to predict where it would have landed, or they just give it to you in front of the posts, right? So that's what Brisbane gets. Then we've got extra time. Then you feel like, well, now the momentum's with Brisbane because they've just snatched this extra life. And I thought Brisbane had a little bit the better of it in the extra time period, but Canberra thought they'd won the game again when a contested bomb comes down into the lap of Fogarty, and Fogarty had missed a field goal earlier and missed, potentially an opportunity to take a field goal. And then you felt like, well, Fogarty's been questioned, can he deliver in the clutch? And he's sort of on the spot, and it's his bomb that Jed Stewart knocks back into play, and Fogarty thinks he's scored the winning try. But as you know, of course, the bunker checks it, and you could tell straight away, like, it did look like it flicked the fingertips of Jed Stewart. So I think they got it right again, as cruel as it is. Canberra's denied. And that was all in extra time. So we got 90 minutes of extra time, as in 5 minutes each way, where it wasn't actually golden point, right? Or was that? So then that wouldn't have been the winning try. Now I'm forgetting whether that was actually in the golden point period, but maybe that was in the golden point period. But before that, at the end of 90, Canberra had the ball on Brisbane's line and for some reason went down the blind side and nearly scored and were denied by an intercept, instead of actually just passing the ball towards the post and kicking a game-winning field goal right at the end of 90. Antonio saying he knocked it backwards. There's an argument that Jed Stewart's hand was kind of motioning backwards, but I would say, and I'm not really biased, I would say it flicked Jed Stewart's fingers, even though his hand was in front of the ball trying to push towards it. It sort of still flicked his fingers and then went into the defender and then went back towards Canberra's line where Fogarty got it. I do think they got that call right, but you've literally got the whole Canberra side celebrating out on the field before the bunker chimes in. Once the bunker says we want to look at it, you sort of know that they've already decided that they'll be overturning it. And of course, then the final play. And I'm just rattling off major plays in my mind, and I'm sure I've missed a few as well. But then, of course, Brisbane, who did look like they had that little bit more energy in the extra period, do get an opportunity with Hunt after Walsh had, Walsh was obviously in the Raiders' sights every time Brisbane got in range. So then the decoy was Walsh that time. And plan B was Hunty, whose kick sort of fades but still hits the post and goes over. And it's an amazing moment for Ben Hunt, because we understand like the history he's got with the Broncos, and he's very much at the back end of his career. But what a signing Ben Hunt has been, and they've needed him more than ever, given the first choice halves are out for Brisbane, and Like I've been burned by Brisbane a few times. I don't think I bet against Brisbane when they played the Dolphins, but they burned me because I'm a Dolphins fan. The Dolphins were up 14 in that game. If the Dolphins hang on there, Brisbane doesn't get top four. Broncos burned me up in Townsville. Again, I think there were a couple forward passes. Broncos burned me against the Storm. That was a Walshy masterclass as well. So I'm telling you, there's something in that water, whatever that water is that Walshy's drinking. He's untouchable. And it's an incredible win by Brisbane. I said it before the game. Whoever won that was just going to be such a strong position with the fortnight and the home prelim, and the loser would be reeling and would just have such a tough path ahead of them. And that's what Canberra's got. We'll talk about Canberra's game this weekend shortly, right? But 3 other finals games took place last weekend. I'll go over them pretty quickly as well. Storm Dogs. So Storm end up winning by 8. So they did get the cover in the end, but only because of that 90-meter intercept try that stung me for unders. Undertaker had first half unders, and it actually was like 16-12. I think there was at least 4 tries in the first half, and Undertaker needed less than 3. Maybe it was 14-12 halftime. Storm Dogs. So Undertaker and I both lost our unders there. Like it was brutal for the Bulldogs. Oh, sorry, I'll scroll my graphic as well. Brutal, obviously, when you go into the game and you've got no Cherry and no Montoya, and then you lose Stephen Crichton. I know he's hung tough for an extra 20 minutes, but couldn't move with the ankle. And then Tuala broke his leg soon after that. So, the backline depth was severely stretched, and it's 10 times worse when it happens in game. It's not like you lose a player 1 week and all right, now you can train all week and new players in new positions and you can pick the strongest side. When it happens in the first half, you've just got to adapt. And Crichton is the Bulldogs captain and best player, and a player they look to create winning moments, as he has done so many times in his career, like usually for Penrith or for Samoa. The Dogs missed that. Maybe that's the difference in the game. And I still thought when the Dogs had the lead in the second half, I thought they can hang on here. They're such a good defensive team. They can defend their way to victory. But Melbourne got some repeat sets, just like a couple of things. Like I think it was a contested dropout, a Storm bomb that got knocked back, that got challenged and went in the Storm's favour, and just those repeat sets. And Melbourne bold call to pick Pezzett at halfback, more of an organising half, and play Wishart, who's more experienced, off the bench, where he's just made for that role because he's such an impact player, so versatile, and Wishy has the winning play ultimately, hitting that hole, getting Melbourne in front. Melbourne hangs on. Dogs still had chances late to win it, but as we know, that final chance actually fell into the hands of Warbrick. On Saturday in New Zealand, the thing was that the Warriors really applied themselves well, very physical, matched Penrith, or maybe even got the better of Penrith in the first half, but the Warriors had to convert that early territory into points, and all that the Warriors had to show for their efforts in the first half was 2 points, and they were down 6-2. Really the Warriors had to score at least a try, if not 2 tries, when they had the ascendancy. But you know what Penrith's like. They've got that patience, and they can just repel you, and they can absorb that pressure, and they know they'll get you late. And I thought Cleary was immaculate with his kicking game and his command of the game and getting repeat sets. I don't even like calling them repeat sets anymore, because when you force a dropout, you're only like 50-50 to actually get a repeat set. But, still forcing dropouts generally is still a positive result. And, I think it's worth, I don't know if this thought crossed anybody else's mind, but when I was watching Cleary, I'm just like, when a team has Nathan Cleary, they always have a chance to win, even when they're not on top. Like, he's so good. And the thought did cross my mind, like, why doesn't he do this at Origin level a bit more? Because, the New South Wales team is even better than the Penrith team. And how was New South Wales down 20 at halftime in game 2 and game 3 when they've got Nathan Cleary, not to mention a lot of other good players? It is a fair question, and it is a fair criticism. Why hasn't Cleary dominated Origin a bit more so? And I'm the guy that's usually defending him, saying it's not like he's never played well in Origin, but I think it's fair to question that. Why is this guy just head and shoulders above everyone else so often in NRL? And then when New South Wales really needs him, it's like he's completely outplayed by Tom Dearden. I don't know. That's a side question for me. But the game got broken open second half. And obviously New Zealand fans are going to say, well, there was a double movement from dummy half, Schneider. I was probably okay with it. I thought maybe he bounced, but maybe depending on who you were following or who you backed, you might disagree. Then the game turns, or the game is decided basically when Penrith's in their own 20, uh, clearing kick, and it bounces, it sits up in front of the Warriors fullback, and Penrith actually regathers it. Then Penrith throws a forward pass in the tackle and score. And that sort of already broke the Warriors' backs, but then it was totally blown out of the water when the Warriors basher, the man Toto, who was in the headlines for his social media posts, nabs an intercept. Can't remember. I don't think he called it clean. I think it went to ground. But either way, if you're the Padonis, you took plus 10.5, and you've got like a questionable put down try, you've got a forward pass try, and then an intercept try, and Penrith wins by 16. You're very hard done by. So New Zealand plus the points probably was the right side, but it was also quite inevitable that Penrith would kick on and win that well. Like, none of us were probably shocked when that happened either. So Penrith progress. And the last game to talk about, and it's going to lead us into previewing the Sharkies this week, right, is Sharks Roosters. So Cronulla, I think ultimately people did fact check me, and I think we discovered that the Sharks had played 11 finals games in the last 10 years and had only won 2. I still could be wrong. It's either 2 and 11 or 2 from 11. The Sharks were only 2 wins in the last 10 years. One was last year against Cowboys, and one was in like 2019 against Penrith. But you can make it a third finals win, and just a second one under Fitzgibbon. Cronulla won at home. Key moments, obviously getting 2 tries in the final 5 minutes of the first half, because the Roosters were up 4-0, and then the Sharks get a try to Mulatalo. Like that duel, Mulatalo and Nwanga-Nituaze, was unreal. But the real killer was with 90 seconds to go in the half. Sam Walker's in possession, sort of stripped to the ball or just sort of loses it. It hits his heel, kicks up, and it's a breakaway to Cronulla, and then they capitalise and score on the left wing. And suddenly it's 12-4 to the Sharks. But that wasn't game over. The Roosters fought back. Crichton puts down a kick. It's 12-10 to the Sharks. And the Roosters were totally on top. The Sharkies couldn't make 30 metres in a set. The Roosters were getting play one nearly on halfway. Like, you look at around the hour mark of this game, I thought the Roosters are going to come home strong, and the Roosters would be the ones winning it by a try or two. But somehow the Sharks defense hung incredibly tough and actually sort of scored a little bit against the run of play late that sealed the win. And you can say for the Roosters, their Achilles heel, similar to what it was all year, was errors that were the Roosters undoing that let the Sharks in late as well. Okay, so that's my summary of last week, and we had a little bit more time to talk about that stuff too. And obviously, it did lead into this week. A question: any injury concern, Nathan, with Edwards taking those conversions late? I mean, they weren't had to have them conversions, because Penrith had a bit of a lead, and I can't remember what they said the reason was. I mean, they were very dismissive, the Panthers, saying that Cleary just had some tightness or something. It's not something that I'm going to read into, because I understand like every team has some walking wounded. Everyone is pushing through stuff, getting treatment this time of year. That's why rest is so invaluable. It could be a little bit of a bonus in our favour, though, because I am playing sort of a dog-centric best bet. But I'll remind you again, my 2 best bets for this game, Sharks Raiders, is either team 1 to 12 at $1.85 on 365, and also taking neither to 30, sort of, but actually Raiders can score up to 31, and that's a same game multi on Sportsbet. Someone's put me off. Ryan says, we can't see your face. Can you guys not see me? I can see myself in the virtual studio. So I guess you're lucky if you can't see me, but that's sort of annoying because it's coming across all right on my side. But as I said, I'm in a different location. I don't know if my connection's different. So I'm sorry. That's sort of thrown me off. But anyway, I think you're going to manage. As long as you can hear me, let's talk about these 2 games. Let's start with, of course, Saturday night. We got no Friday night footy. I'll change my display as well, so it's Sharks Sharks Raiders team list, and I may even try and minimize myself. No, people saying they can't see me. This is one of these weird things. I'm sorry. It's one of these weird things where, from my view, it's fine, but then it's only afterwards that I find out that there was an issue. So then, what can you guys see? Just the team list. Oh well, just a black screen in the corner. Yeah, that's. Sorry about that, guys. It's annoying. All I can really do is reduce it so you can see more of the screen. Okay. Technology, eh? Never ceases to let you down. So I would also just sort of, since the backup time for teams is topical, Ricky complained, would it have been a different result if that Raiders Broncos game was Saturday night? Could a player like Walsh have made all those same plays? Would every pass have stuck? It's a fair question because it was certainly suitable to Walshy playing in daytime conditions, right? But Ricky complained about the backup time. Someone explain this to me. Why do we have the two teams that played the latter two games last week are in the Saturday spot, including a team that had to play Sunday Arvo, gets a 6-day turnaround and now plays Saturday. And then meanwhile, the two teams from the earlier games last week are on Sunday, including a team that had a Friday game. The Dogs get a 9-day turnaround. Well, wouldn't it have been made more sense for Saturday to be Dogs Panthers and Sunday to be Raiders Sharks? What am I missing? All right. In any case, it is Saturday, 7:50 p.m. GIO. Raiders 4.5-point favourites, and these sides did meet at this venue. It was a Thursday night footy game, round 5. I'm pretty sure it was. Do you remember that one? Canberra won 24-20, and it was one of the great team tries for the win in the final minute in a regular season game ever. It was Seb Chris finishing it off, but nearly the whole side touched the ball. I have a feeling this one could be just as tight. Now, at least the Raiders had no casualties from their 94-minute battle against Brisbane. It's the same 17 named by Ricky. Cronulla, likewise, are unchanged. Hazelton is in the reserves, so he's a chance to join. And Nikora did actually start off the bench because Fitzgibbon had doubts on his match fitness, and also there's a trust factor there with Billy Burns. So I've warned you for weeks, Cronulla are a stealth team. They've been creeping under the radar and have actually won 8 of their last 9. But it's not like Canberra have got bad form. Canberra won as many games as they needed to top the table. But, of course, now Canberra risk being turfed out in straight sets. And just a side note, if you follow AFL, that happened last weekend. Apparently, it hadn't happened for 30 years, but the minor premiers in the AFL, Adelaide, lost twice at home first 2 weeks, and they're gone. That's a good trivia question. Is anyone watching? Can anyone tell me when was the last time that an NRL minor premier lost the first 2 weeks of finals? Because I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I don't always remember who the minor prem was. So extra points if someone can give me that nugget of knowledge. Now, I look at these team lists and you tell me what you think. Like, it's a very even game to me. The Raiders, you have to say they're the slightly better team. They proved that this year. And you do take McInnes out of Cronulla and it brings him down a little bit because he was the spiritual leader. Barney reckons Dragons 2011, and that wouldn't surprise me. But okay, great recall, Barney, if that's right. So it's been a little while. Obviously, Canberra face that risk this weekend. So yeah, I've got very even teams here. The best half on the ground for me is Strange. He's just getting better and better, and what a promising career he's got. But like Tricky Trindle was at his best last week. Hines and Fogarty are a really interesting matchup there because they both get accused of not coming up in the clutch. But I think these guys have both been in command most of the year, and they both play behind really powerful packs. You look at the Sharks engine room. I know that the Sharks were losing the yardage against the Roosters, but they bent in the second half without breaking and, dominated the week before against the Bulldogs and stood up when they needed to. Cronulla, the forwards there. Like, I'm looking at Tapane against Fanua Blake. That's going to be blockbuster. I look at Canberra's spine and I do see the more dynamic fullback. I prefer Weeks to Kennedy, but I'd also like Blake Brayley even over the great tandem that the Raiders have at a dummy half. And outside backs, I can't split either. And I do feel like since Iro has gotten back into the Sharks fold, like he's made a real difference. Barney says now, sorry, it was 2009. And that sounds even more realistic because I guess the Dragons won the grand final in 2010, but were known as sort of serial chokers up until then. And Ryan says it also happened with Para in 05 and Cronulla in 99. But that's the previous final system too. In fact, now you're going to have to tell me when they got rid of the McIntyre system. So we might have never had a minor prem lose in straight sets since we've gone to the new system, which splits the top four and the next four. And I'm not telling you Canberra's going to lose. I'm just saying, obviously, like this is a massive danger game, and it's going to be hard for Canberra to pick themselves up from last week or from 2 days ago. And I want to talk about that. So if I've got very little between the teams, then I'm going to look beyond the players. And Canberra are at home. It's going to be rocking, no doubt about it. The penalty count was at one stage 6-1 to Canberra, and that helped the Green Machine build that 28-12 lead for sure. But counteracting, enjoying a home edge, I've got Cronulla's got the extra day of prep. I've got Canberra did not play 80 minutes. They played 94. Now, 94 minutes of the greatest finals game we've ever seen. That's easily equivalent to a game and a half of like a regular season game of NRL, right? And the Raiders lost in brutal fashion. Already touched on it. They celebrated on the field in the 80th minute when Walsh's kick was blocked, and again in extra time when they thought Fogarty scored. So they actually got denied twice and had their heart broken twice, and the third time when Hunt's kick went over. Now, admittedly, I'm not writing the Raiders off. 2 buys since round 20 still helps now in terms of the energy reserves. And, of course, the Raiders rested in round 27. So they've sort of had 3 buys in the last 2 months, okay? On top of that, Canberra have got a lot of young players. I don't think the Raiders are cooked. What I will say is, can Canberra come out of that grueling match against Brisbane and then back that up in the next 3 weeks and win like 3 wars, like 3 more grueling games? That's what it's going to take for Canberra to win the comp. They're going to have to beat this really, this really hot Sharks side, then going to have to go and win in Melbourne, and then going to have to win a grand final in Sydney against, a Brisbane or a Penrith, someone like that. None of those are obviously easy. And I don't think Canberra can do it. I think that they cost themselves that chance to win the comp on Sunday, Arvo. But that's not the question, is whether Canberra can rebound and win the comp. It's can Canberra collect themselves and get up this weekend? I think absolutely they can in front of their home fans. It's just not an ideal spot because of that emotional blow, of course, right? But for me, this line shouldn't be 4.5. It should be 2.5. It's a knife edge game, and I do lean to the underdog. I also lean to the unders. I think at a night game, I know how good the Sharks defend. And look, the Raiders are a really good defensive side too. Yes, they gave up 29 points last week, but Brisbane is a bigger attacking threat than Cronulla, I believe, and the day conditions. What was it? 5 tries each 2 days ago, right? I think this game, Canberra, Cronulla, is going to be more like 3 tries each. Okay, I've hit either team 1 to 12 because I think Canberra's too good to get blown out at home, but Cronulla's in this game up to their eyeballs. So that's why I've played it my way. But there's various ways you can attack that, like Ryan's liking Sharks plus 2.5 second half if Canberra run out of steam, perhaps. But you could also make a good argument for plus 2.5 first half. Do you just play the plus 4.5 with Cronulla? Do you just play unders? You can get under 46.5. That's a lot of points for a nighttime finals game. Look how low scoring Sharks Roosters was last week. This could be more similar to that. If you're going to press me for a result and a score, I'll give you Raiders in the range of 22-20. I do hope the Raiders win just because I think Canberra poses a bigger threat to Melbourne in the prelim. I think Canberra can push Melbourne further next week. Do you guys agree with that? I know many of us remember the Sharks did roll the Storm earlier this year, but don't forget, the Raiders also beat Melbourne in Magic Round That was a cracker. That's probably the rematch I'd love to see. We talked about one of the best finals matches in history being Raiders in Melbourne. That could be on the cards if Canberra can get through on Saturday, and that's how I see it. And again, I've told you why I like unders. That's why I couldn't help myself. I've also played that same gamer, which is like Sharks don't get 30 points in this, and Canberra don't get 32 points. So basically, I just need it to be relatively in the balance, and neither team blows the other one out, which is always a risk in any game of rugby league. But given both these sides, the strength and form that they're in, I think, I feel like that degree of confidence to make it a best bet. We do have one sharpshooter this weekend to share a play, and it's Nicole on this game.
Hey everyone, it's Nicole from Wiki. I'm still reeling from that Raiders-Broncos game. I hope you guys enjoy the weekend of footy. I'm going to get straight into my try score tip for the weekend. Someone who scores an NRL try 1 in every 8 games that he plays. He's scored in 2 of the last 4 games that he's played, which is obviously awesome for a middle forward. None other than Braden ULA, paying $19 to score a try anytime against the Raiders this weekend. A tired Raiders and a Sharks outfit that does score a lot of tries through the middle. Very quickly, obviously I like him. I've been tipping him for years for like first try score, second half and stuff. But the other reason I like this $19 price tag is that he does sometimes get a few minutes late in game, and that's how he actually scored one of his tries about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So love Brendan ULA, $19 score try anytime. Guys, I've been promoting a free mobile app for Wiki. I think we've got about 400 people trying that out in the last 3 or 4 weeks since it's been out. Obviously, we've got the odds comparison tool at Discord with over 5,000 people and a lot more. It's all free to check out if you Google Wiki Linktree. Good luck, punt responsibly.
Thanks to Nicole there. Let's move to Sunday now. Sorry, I'm assuming you still can't see me. We move to Sunday Arvo, Bulldogs, Panthers. So you can see the team list. So I'll scroll down and show much of the lineups as possible there for Penrith against Canterbury. Oh, and now I've gone and now what can you see? Just a blank screen. Because I've accidentally gone and hidden my shared screen. I'll try and share the image again. Otherwise, that's going to be pretty grim if you can't see anything. Now, hopefully, you can see the team list. Someone said, hi, Winnie. I don't know if that means that I was back or I'm not. I'm sorry, but I'll persist anyway. Okay, Penrith are a 9.5 point favourite. It's going to be a massive crowd at a core, and I already spoke about the devastating loss for the Dogs. Captain Crichton and Tuala gone as well. Montoya's still out, though he's in the reserves. Crichton's actually in the reserves, so maybe his ankle's not as bad as first feared, but it'd be long odds to play in this one. Cherry does return for the Bulldogs at centres, and then Burden will start at centre, which is where he had to slot on Friday night. Sexton is at halfback, Galvin to 6. Hayward remains at 9. Marnie is on the bench. It is a small bench at that for the Bulldogs because you got Mann, Tupanua, Marnie, and just the one prop. So whether the one prop being Harry Hayes, whether someone like Sam Hughes could actually come into the team as well. But, oh, no, I've bloody gone and hidden it again. Sorry, because I'm trying to mess with the display. But it would be pretty cruel to drop Reid Marnie midweek again, I would say. So, look, the Dogs having a small pack has been their calling card all year. They play with a lot of line speed, a lot of intensity. And that's the style that Penrith's going to see on Sunday. And speaking of the Panthers, they named the same 17. Summerton is still at 9, although Kenny is in the reserves. He's got a hamstring injury, so Mitch Kenny could bolster the 4-peat premiers further. And it was a typical Panthers finals performance, getting the job done in New Zealand. We spoke about that. And what I've already spoken about is that the Dogs made a bad call not resting people in round 27. Now the Dogs truly are on the brink of being bailed out in straight sets. And you've got cluster injuries. and you cop those injuries in a game, you didn't need to play your stars. And then, of course, compounded when you lost 2 more outside backs last week, right? And ironically, the last time these two met, Canterbury and Penrith, was the game where Ivan decided to no-show. And that has played out very well for Penrith. So we can't read anything into sort of how that game went. The game we want to look at is the earlier clash between the Dogs and Panthers, which was one of the battles of the season. And of course, Penrith got the win there, basically on the back of that Nathan Cleary charge down. I think this game will be every bit as intense. But here's the thing. This is why I'm not writing off the Bulldogs, why I have played Dogs over 12.5 at $1.85 as a best bet, is the Dogs are going to have a huge crowd behind them. The Dogs played very well against Melbourne. That game could have gone either way, all right? You take away 6 points for that intercept try. You know, and before that, I think it was 3 tries apiece. Yes, the Dogs have lost a lot of outside backs, but Burton is an elite centre. So you play Burton at centre. You don't lose anything in the centres, but you do lose a good half. But the Dogs do have that depth because of the whole Galvin situation. And, of course, Sexton's very capable. So you still have 2 good halves. Okay. And then the forward pack, yes, Canterbury's light, but that's their style, as I said. I think the Dogs are like Canberra, probably even more extreme. The Dogs had to win on Friday to win the comp. The Dogs are not going to win this game and then go and win in Brisbane and then go and win the grand final. I don't think. Like, when you go back to the fact that the Dogs didn't rest anyone in the regular season, and then, like I just said about Canberra, like to play 4 straight grueling weeks in the finals, which is what it would take to win the comp, it's probably not going to happen. But that doesn't mean that Canterbury can't empty the tank this weekend, okay? Because I'll tell you something else about the Raiders and the Bulldogs that they have in common. They both haven't really been here before in the last few years, and both these teams are on an upward trajectory. The Raiders a bit out of nowhere, and the Bulldogs, like last year, made the finals but didn't win a finals game. This year, trying to go one better and win a finals game. And because the Dogs came top 4, you know, the Dogs have a chance to progress to week 3 of the finals, and that would be seen as progression. So there's still positive gains to be found this year out of the Raiders and Dogs. As much as it's devastating if you had like a ticket for the Raiders or the Dogs to win the grand final, because you're probably not going to win the grand final now because of those tight losses last week. But can they win this weekend? They can. And of course, the Panthers should be clear favourites here. They've got a lot more class, composure, experience. But another reason the Dogs have a good chance is, I think, the 9 days to summon all the energy possible and go toe-to-toe with Penrith here. And yes, the loss of Crichton, you know, you can't replace a guy like him. But I still think the game will be closer than most predict, because on the back of the Dogs' forward pack that can contain Penrith. And I think the Bulldogs will create opportunities through ruck speed. And, you know, we'll lose the first choice goal kicker, but I'm not convinced that Crichton was a better goal kicker than Burton. So we don't actually lose goal kicking proficiency, I don't believe. And being a day game as well, again, I sort of suggested maybe that was a mistake last week, playing a Broncos total under in the day. I'm going the other way now. I'm going to Canterbury team total overs, 12.5. It is still a lot of points against Penrith, but, you know, it's doable, I think, for this Dog side. I think they will come up with 3 tries in this. I did consider either team 1-12 in this game as well, Penrith Canterbury, as I've played it for the Saturday night game, Sharks against Canberra. But it's a similar bet anyway. I think if the Bulldogs can't get over 12 points, then maybe they can't get within a couple of tries of Penrith either. And I also think Penrith's going to be good for about 3 tries in this game. You know, if I have to pick a score, I'll give you Penrith does prevail and wins something like 20-16. But that's why I lean to the Dogs with the points. If I could have got a plus 10.5, I might be on that way for the Bulldogs. And I wouldn't be surprised by the weekend if you could. I wouldn't be surprised at all if a 10.5 is available out there. So I think the Dogs understand Penrith's like the better team, the class team. The Dogs are going to have to take their opportunities when they get them. unlike the Warriors, who were not able to do so. Because I think if you're playing Penrith, when you get a chance, if you're not taking it, it's just inevitable that Penrith will burn you late and then can take the game away from you. So it just comes down to, can the Doggies ice a couple of chances when presented with them? And look, I think either winner is going to be set up a great prelim against Brisbane. The Bulldogs blown out in Brisbane, in fact. But in fact, the Bulldogs lost to Brisbane twice this year, of course, because there was that crazy comeback earlier. But I think the Bulldogs present a good matchup for Brisbane. But we all want the 2023 grand final rematch, don't we? Like, there's something poetic about, Brisbane against Penrith again, and the form of Walshy and, Nathan Cleary at the peak of his powers. So that's probably what we'd like to see. I mean, I think, if in 7 days' time, if I can be previewing Raiders, Storm, and Broncos, Panthers, you couldn't really ask for two better games than that. But there's a lot of footy to be played before that plays out, and 3 best bets on the line. And I'm sorry that I don't have more sharpshooters. I mean, I can check my messages, but it's probably too late unless anyone messages and says they forgot. But just stay tuned in the group, because the boys are always generous with their contributions, their plays there. Like Adonis, even if he can't get a clip to me, he always shares his tip of the week, and he's looking to rebound after probably having the right side with New Zealand against Penrith as well. So my display's a bit all over the place there. But 46 minutes, and it's only a 2-game weekend. That's more than enough, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. Appreciate your company as always. Continue the conversation in the comments with me as always, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Lego.